Welcome, everyone. Whether you are sitting in a lecture hall right now or logging in from home, it's absolutely great to have you. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the future of our global food systems. We are going to examine a concept that is literally changing the game for farmers and global institutions alike: regenerative agriculture. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what it is, why it matters so much, and how it actually works out there in the real world.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our agenda for today. First, we'll examine the global agricultural crisis. Second, we'll define regenerative agriculture. Third, we'll look at its economic and environmental significance. Fourth, we'll address practical barriers to adoption. And finally, we will explore the IFC 3R framework.
Section 1, the global agricultural crisis. To really understand the cure, we've got to take a hard look at the disease, right? We need to critically examine the devastating impacts of our current conventional farming methods.
I want you to think about this fraction for a second. 1/3. It's a massive number. According to the data, 1/3 of all global soils are already degraded. And at the exact same time, conventional agriculture is pumping out nearly 1/3 of all global greenhouse gas emissions. This whole extractive way of producing food has pushed our natural ecosystems right to the breaking point.
The crisis we're facing is completely systemic. Right now, agriculture is the biggest consumer of fresh water on the planet. It's the #1 contributor of pollution to our water sources, and, this environmental crisis, it immediately becomes a financial crisis. A recent survey showed that 61% of farmers have suffered severe revenue losses lately just because of adverse weather. Plus, the burden isn't shared equally at all. 4 out of 5 people displaced by climate impacts are actually women and girls.
Behind all those massive statistics, there's a very real human element. When extreme weather hits, we're talking sudden droughts or massive pest swarms, small-scale farmers face total devastation. They are right on the front lines of this climate vulnerability, and it disproportionately impacts women in these agricultural communities.
Section 2, defining regenerative agriculture. Okay, so we know the problem. Let's pivot to the solution and actually define the core nature of regenerative agriculture. Think of regenerative agriculture as a big umbrella term. It covers a broad range of practices that essentially reverse the damage of extractive farming by working with natural cycles, not fighting against them. And here's the key takeaway. Unlike organic farming, it doesn't have some rigid, strict list of prohibited practices. Instead, it's totally flexible, it's adaptive, and it depends entirely on the local context.
So what does this actually look like when you're out there in the dirt? Well, it means minimizing soil disturbance and maximizing crop diversity. It means bringing livestock into the mix, keeping the soil covered, and keeping living roots in the ground all year round. But honestly, the absolute golden rule is that last one: knowing and adjusting to your specific farm context. It's about actively managing the land to heal it, rather than just endlessly extracting from it.
Section 3, significance, economics, and environment. Why does this matter so much? Well, we are going to connect these vital ecological benefits directly to some incredibly powerful economic outcomes.
When you contrast these two paradigms, the choice is pretty obvious. Extractive agriculture degrades the soil, relies heavily on synthetic chemicals, and leaves farmers super vulnerable to climate shocks. Regenerative agriculture, on the other hand, rebuilds soil health. It creates essential climate resilience. It supports global food security. And, this is huge for private sector investment, it boosts long-term profitability.
Now, what's really interesting here is the financial data backing up those environmental claims. According to a massive World Bank Group meta-analysis, farmers' profits actually went up by an average of 19% when they implemented these nature-based solutions. So, making sustainable choices literally drives significant, measurable financial gains right at the farm level.
And the big picture macroeconomic value is absolutely staggering. Just to put this in perspective, in Africa alone, scaling up the uptake of regenerative agriculture could support almost 5 million jobs by the year 2040. So we aren't just talking about an environmental initiative here. This is a massive engine for job creation and economic diversification.
Section 4, practical barriers to adoption. As university scholars, we need to apply a critical lens here. If the benefits are this obvious, why isn't every farm on Earth transitioning overnight?
Well, for a lot of farmers, especially smallholders who are already operating on incredibly thin margins, making this leap is honestly just too risky without structural support. The transition means higher upfront cost for new equipment and seeds. There are very real financial risks, like potential short-term dips in productivity while the soil is actually healing. Add a lack of technical training and insecure land tenure into the mix,
And yeah, you can easily see why a risk-averse farmer would just prefer to stick with the conventional methods they already know, even if the long-term returns are lower.
Overcoming these barriers requires massive structural investment. The Rockefeller Foundation estimates the funding gap to shift our global food systems is roughly $250 to $430 billion every single year, for a decade. That sounds like an unimaginable amount of money, right? But wait, the return on that investment is estimated to save $5.7 trillion in damages to people and the planet. Bridging this gap is absolutely a critical challenge for future policymakers and financial institutions.
Section 5, the IFC 3R framework. So how do we actually evaluate, fund, and scale this massive transition? Let's look at a specific framework developed by the International Finance Corporation, or the IFC.
Let's move to and see how this builds out. The IFC uses 3 interdependent core impact areas to guide their investments in regenerative agriculture. They call it the 3R framework: resilience, restoration, and reduction. Let's break these down quickly. The first R is resilience. This is totally fundamental. Production systems have to be able to withstand and adapt to environmental and economic shocks. By building resilience, we safeguard our food security, and we directly protect farmers' livelihoods from wild market volatility and extreme weather, all while empowering vulnerable groups.
The second R is restoration. This is about actively creating lasting value for the ecosystems. It's not just about doing less harm. It is about actively reversing land degradation. We do this by rebuilding soil fertility, bringing biodiversity back to the land, and dramatically improving how we manage our water.
And the final R is reduction. This hits the climate crisis head-on. The goal here is lowering the greenhouse gas emissions intensity of agriculture itself. With the right private sector investments, we can promote techniques that actually pull carbon down into the ground, slash the need for synthetic inputs, and optimize resource use. The really cool part is the incredible synergy between these methods. When livestock integration and diverse crop management are implemented correctly, they are codependent. You don't just get one R. By shifting the whole farming system, you are simultaneously building resilience, achieving ecosystem restoration, and driving carbon reduction all at the exact same time.
So, the crucial point to take away today is this: regenerative agriculture is far more than just a buzzword. It is a highly viable, entirely necessary pathway to secure our global food supply, lift farming communities out of poverty, and ensure we keep our planet livable. But it requires us to step away from an extractive past and invest heavily in a restorative future.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to really chew on. You are the future leaders, economists, scientists, and policymakers. Now that you know the profound economic and environmental benefits, and you understand the massive financial barriers standing in the way, how will you apply this knowledge in your future careers to close that funding gap and ensure our global food systems are truly regenerative? Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope this sparks some fantastic discussions in your studies.